Man, even the fade out is long on that. So I definitely need to readjust that intro. Thank you for the 5 people who actually tuned in and watched that entire almost 2-minute long intro. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. That is not supposed to be that long. We'll get that chopped down. But Michael, how are you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. Good. Football. That's all I can say. Talking all kinds of football. 3 different leagues tonight, actually.
There you go. There you go. So for anybody who just tuning in to watch the CFL version of Summer Showcase, Michael actually covers essentially every other league that's out there, basically, outdoor league anyway. So he's got a show called Summer Showcase. Overtime with Zach Bronkhorst, the quarterback from the Milano Seamen of the ELF. There's also a normal Summer Showcase every Tuesday with Bryce Lego of Pylon
Legos, yeah.
Productions. And then also Spring Showcase, which just wrapped up its season about the LFA. So if you're a fan of any one of those leagues, make sure you tune in and check out all of those shows, which are available in replay on YouTube right now. They're all broken down in nice, handy playlists for each show. So whichever show you happen to like should be really easy to find the latest episode. But yeah, anyway, on to some CFL action tonight. We had a very interesting week 1 slate of games. I mean, I don't think anybody saw Winnipeg losing week 1, but Montreal came out hot. They looked really good. We had 3 other games that came down to 8-point deficits. So very interesting, kind of slate of games and weekend overall. 4 days of games, actually. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this Montreal-Winnipeg game, which was, like I said, honestly, probably, in my opinion, the game of the week. Montreal coming off a Grey Cup win. Winnipeg, obviously always a contender. The last 10 years, they haven't even had a losing season. So definitely was interesting to see that matchup in week 1. Did not come out the way I had expected. What are your thoughts on this game? Did you expect Montreal to win against Winnipeg in week 1?
No, I picked Winnipeg. I actually think you picked Montreal. If I remember correctly, I think you picked Montreal. It was either you or our guest from the CFL podcast. I don't remember. Somebody picked Montreal in this game. I do remember this. I did not expect the loss to happen in the fashion that it did. Winnipeg kind of looked like they were out of sync. Definitely no rhythm at all. And kudos to Montreal for getting them out of their game early in this matchup. It just never felt like a Zach Collaros-esque type game. He never really seemed like he got back on track with it. He threw an interception. He averaged only 6.3 yards per reception. It just not a whole lot of room to do much of anything. So this Montreal defense set the tone early and definitely sent a message to Winnipeg that, hey, the Grey Cup championship game in November was not a fluke. It's like right off the bat.
I would completely agree. And, I think the most surprising thing to me in this game is the fact that, like you said, Zach Collaros did not look like Zach Collaros, but the biggest reason why is Winnipeg's offensive line just looked like they were on another planet or something. They honestly allowed way more pressure than I was expecting from Montreal, even though Montreal's a very talented team. It seemed like a lot more than, like I said, I anticipated in week 1. I expected this to be a close game. I don't believe I picked Montreal to win, but I will go back and check. I did not do a good job of keeping track of those picks last week. So I will do a better job this week, and we'll move forward with a clean slate, and we'll present our picks each week. So I apologize on that front. Been kind of a busy week for yours truly here. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think like I said, the offensive line has kind of disappointed in a big fashion. They got a lot of pressure right up the middle over that center, and got in Collaros' face a lot more than he would like, obviously. But I thought what was more surprising, in my personal opinion, was the fact that they almost completely shut down Brady Oliveira. 11 carries, 38 yards, 3.5 yards per carry. I mean, really nothing that I would expect from Oliveira. I mean, considering the last couple seasons that he's had for Winnipeg.
Yeah, I feel like the Brady Oliveira was the shutdown or the containment, whatever you want to call it. It looked more of a shutdown than it was a containment. The shutdown of him is I think really kind of where this offense kind of got out of whack early. They couldn't get the run game going. I think their first two drives ended in two and outs. It wasn't pretty at all. Galeris was out of sorts. Only two sacks, I believe, Montreal put on him, but I think the quarterback pressures were pretty high, if I remember correctly. I don't know if CFL does a good job of tracking those QB pressures or not, but at the end of the day, it's week one. You can't necessarily predict a season based off the first week. If anything can tell us, as far as outdoor football is concerned, that week one isn't necessarily a indicator as to what the season's going to bring. But if I'm Winnipeg, I'm not hitting the panic button, and if I'm their fans, I'm not hitting the panic button. I mean, you've been to the last four Grey Cup championship games. You're 2-2 in those games, so um, yeah. I mean, it didn't look pretty in week one, and at least there was no Grey Cup hangover for Montreal. Montreal looked pretty sharp across the board. Cody Fajardo looked decent, and I think that's good news for Montreal that they didn't have that hangover because it produced it's going to produce a straight line hopefully into the season, and kind of this game hopefully for them isn't just like a one and done thing, and it sets the tone for them, heading down the stretch.
It could certainly be a good tone setter, like you said. I mean, Winnipeg is no slouch. I mean, I don't care how they came out and looked like in this game.
Hmm.
They're still one of the most talented teams in the CFL, and honestly, I'd put them up against probably any team in the UFL right now, currently as well. But that's a story for another day. But I mean, honestly, like you said, the shutdown of Brady Oliveira was very uncharacteristic for Winnipeg, but like we said, the offensive line was struggling all game long. But it seemed like Montreal just had their number from the very beginning of this game. It didn't seem like Winnipeg was ever really um, I don't want to say in it because they were in it, but it just never looked like it was out of hand for Montreal. It was just a situation where they seemed to continue to find ways to stop Winnipeg and get the ball back, and ultimately kept the score ahead of them all game long. I mean, they were the first to score a touchdown. They doubled it up in quarter two, scored some more points in third quarter, and then it followed it up again in quarter four and literally outscored Winnipeg in every single quarter. So it's just kind of crazy to see that it was just complete and utter domination, thanks in part to their defensive performance, which, like I said, I did not see coming to this extent. Um, but there was a couple injuries that came out of this game that I think were pretty significant that I wanted to ask you about and get your opinion about, considering the depth that Winnipeg has. Kenny Lawler, the wide receiver, broke his arm. It sounds like he's going to be out for an extended period of time, which will test their wide receiver depth. And then also Oliveira, who we were just talking about, also suffered a knee injury. It sounds like he's only going to miss a couple games, was moved to the 1-game injury list. Real quick, what are your thoughts on these two players getting injured? How big of a blow are these two injuries together? And would you feel a little bit more comfortable with Winnipeg's ability to overcome them if they hadn't happened together?
Honestly, together it's pretty big. Separate, not so much, because I think Augustine's a very good backup. I think that he's produced well when he's been called upon and when he's been needed. So I think that he gives Winnipeg a little bit of a reprieve. The first week, what was it? He went 2 for 15, I think. So he had better yards per carry average than Oliveira did. So you can see that he can produce. He's also been in the system for a little bit now. I think this is going into his third year with Winnipeg. So it gives them a little bit of it gives them somebody with a little bit of familiarity as well. They have the big fullback in Chris Ike there as well that can open up holes and probably utilize him a little bit more. Hopefully to try to get the ball rolling with the run game. And then on top of that, Nick Dembski, can line up in the backfield and also run the ball for you too. They've used him as a running back in the past. It's not something that's outside the norm for them to line him up even when they have a healthy running back. So they can kind of soften the load a little bit for Augustine. As the receiver side of things, I don't think it's as big. Watching this game, I kept hearing the announcers talking about uh, career year last year for this guy, career year for the last guy, and it just goes to show that Winnipeg's offense is not a slouch of an offense by any means, and I think that they can overcome the Kenny Lawler injury. There's also a guy named Ontaria Wilson. I believe he came from Florida State. Um, I don't know what his I don't know if he's a rookie or second year guy, but he's got good size. He played pretty well down there at Florida State, and he could probably fill this gap if need be, and come in and make some plays if called upon. But it's a veteran wide receiving core with Dembski, showing in Waltarski. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, so I apologize. But those three have been there, and then Myron Mitchell, if I don't correct me if I'm wrong, didn't came over from Edmonton in the offseason, right? Was it Edmonton?
I think he was previously with UFL. I don't know if he was with the
Well,
CFL last time.
he was with Birmingham, right? But
Yeah,
I think he played in Edmonton at one point in time.
he may
Maybe.
have. I'm
Okay.
not. I'd have to look that up.
Okay, so he comes over from Birmingham as well. So he has experience in both. I think he has experience in the CFL. I'm pretty positive he played with Edmonton at one point in time. So it's not a non-veteran core they'd be able to step up and take in place of an injury. So I think Winnipeg's okay there. I think they just need to focus a little bit on this offensive line, and I think that will gel as time goes on. But they did lose some talent in the offseason, and I don't know if maybe that's where some of the weakness came from in this first week. You're muted, Sam.
Sorry about that. The mute button was not cooperating. It took me a couple tries there. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's some attrition in the offseason. I mean, anytime you're a perennial powerhouse like Winnipeg, teams are going to want to bring in your players. They're typically very talented. So they did lose a couple players that were, obviously large losses. But bringing in guys like Myron Mitchell, Terrell Bonds from the UFL merger is no small task. I mean, obviously, we talked about Chris Ike briefly there. He's a new face. Chris Streveler comes back from the NFL. I mean, there's no lack of talent on this team by any stretch, but it is interesting to kind of see how they've filled the openings that have come available, rather than maybe the traditional path that they've taken over the past couple seasons. But I think the UFL merger shook up a lot of things for a lot of different leagues, Canada included. Due to the influx of talent that maybe wasn't available, a year ago or 2 years ago. So it's kind of interesting to see how that's affected things for all of these teams. Just to go back to one of your points a moment ago, Johnny Augustine, he's been with Winnipeg for 6 seasons now. Definitely knows the offense probably just as good as some of the coaches that are there currently. So, definitely a veteran back that can step in and he knows what he's doing. You brought up Chris Ike. I was a huge, huge fan of him in the draft process. I really wanted him in Ottawa. He lands here in Winnipeg where they're able to use him in kind of a fullback role, which I was not anticipating. But I think that's huge for their offense. It opens up a couple things and then also gives you extra depth for when Brady Oliveira inevitably gets hurt, like we just saw. So, another interesting preemptive move. They probably didn't expect him to become this crucial this quick, but ultimately they got lucky that they brought in a guy like Chris Ike, and we'll see how valuable he can be now that Oliveira's hurt this week.
Yeah, and it hasn't really been 6 years for Augustine already. It feels like 4. That's why I said 3 or 4, because it just only, wow, that's crazy. 6 years already for Augustine. Man, that's nuts. I did not expect that. That surprised me a little bit.
Seasons go by fast, it seems like, especially when you only play 3-down football. Games move fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also the I also forget that I started getting into this business when 2019. So I mean, like I had my first run with stuff in 2019. So I mean, it's been already 5 years as it is. So
Well, that explains a lot there. You definitely got into the CFL before I did. I watched a couple games probably around that time, but never really got super into it until I started covering it for CFL News Hub, actually. So kind of funny how that all worked. Um, kind of dove headfirst into it, all of it. But we're going to, whoops, that is not the right one. We are going to move on to the second game of the weekend, which, give me just a moment. I believe I closed my schedule. There we go. Hamilton at Calgary on Friday. This turned into a better game than I expected. Something tells me this was exactly the game you wanted to see.
Uh, yeah, as a Calgary fan, I can't be any more happy than I am with Jake Mayer. He had a sensational game. He looked really good, improved. He was very inconsistent last year, and I know that was a first year start. I knew that they were taking a risk. They were like the youngest team or one of the youngest teams in the league last year, and they stuck with them. And I, the improvement from this year from last year to this year has been remarkable in just one game. And I know it's just one game, and it's Hamilton, who we're still a little bit unsure about. They're kind of the wild card this year for the roster overall. But to be able to spoil Bo Levi Mitchell's return to Calgary, it's a little bittersweet because I like Bo Levi, but it looked like to me that they made the right choice in moving on from him and letting Mayer start this. It took a year, but it looked really good this year or this week. So we'll see if we'll see if it maintains. But this Calgary team is a team that once again is they kind of tore it down to try to rebuild it back up, and the UFL merger I think helped with a lot of that across the board. You had some of the top talent come into the league, so I mean, it kind of gives a little bit of a help to be able to rebrand that a lot faster.
I would agree. And not to spend too much time on the UFL merger, but I believe that merger kind of affected the way players overall look at the league as well.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't maybe as sure of a situation at that point. So, I mean, then if you have a CFL offer on the table, realistically, it's in your best interest to take that because those teams aren't going anywhere. I mean, it's not like Ottawa is going to just fold up shop and disappear tomorrow and they're the newest team. So, a lot of these teams have been around for hundreds of years or 100 years. So I mean, it's a situation where you might want to look at the CFL a little bit differently if you're an American player and your options are the UFL or the CFL. But to kind of go back to what you were talking about, Jake Mayer had an adjusted completion rate per PFF.com of 91.6%. Just unbelievable performance by him. It's funny because I discussed this in the Calgary breakdown. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. It's with Matthew Harrison from CFLNewsHub.com. And we both discussed how Jake Mayer can be one of the most exciting and frustrating quarterbacks to watch in the CFL. It seems like one game he will ball out and he will look like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then the next game he'll throw 3 interceptions and you have no idea what the hell happened over the past week that changed. And apparently this week he decided to look like the second coming of Tom Brady. I don't think that he was necessarily doing anything that was super risky, but at the same time, I mean, if you take what the defense gives all game long and you complete 21 of 26 passes, go 252 and 2 touchdowns, there's not many complaints to be had about that performance. That's for sure.
I'll take that any day of the week over a risk taker that went 10 for 31. Like he didn't throw an interception. I think that was one of the biggest things. Is one of the biggest issues last year was I think that reading the defenses and realizing what was coming didn't have it wasn't slow enough for him. So I think the game was too sped up. But you take a look at this game here with Hamilton. I mean, he completed a pass to 8 different receivers. That's something that we wouldn't have seen last year. And Clark Barnes, you know, hey, I'm Clark Barnes. I was probably not on the top three on the depth chart, but 6 for 61 and a touchdown is a pretty fair, pretty fair opening week, for sure. So, the receiving core has got some talent, and Mayer seems to have a good relationship with some of them. So, if that can continue, Calgary should be very, very happy with what they see coming out of the week.
I would agree. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I think came out of this game for me. You lose a guy like Malik Henry, and I know that the Stampeders have always had talent at wide receiver. You obviously have Reggie Bagleton there. You got Marcon Michelle, and then Clark Barnes, like you said, who kind of came out of nowhere. Cam Eccles, Jalen Philpott. I mean, I honestly, there's a lot of talent in this receiver room, but I expected the injury to Malik Henry to affect the room more. I don't know why I did, considering he missed most of last season. You would think that the team was prepared, but I just felt like that was a bigger blow than Calgary really let on. So I mean, kudos to them for them basically making it look like he's not even really a part of their offense all over again. Shout out to my boy Cam Eccles Looper, found his first CFL end zone. Beautiful catch, three defenders around him, still came down with the ball. Always want to see him succeed everywhere he goes. So it's kind of cool to see him succeeding and also succeeding for your team. I always kind of root for my buddies' teams, and I root for the Stampeders now because of you and Cam. So as long as they're not beating Ottawa, they'll get my support all season long. So
Yeah,
definitely awesome to see them get this win, and for more reasons than one in week one. And then you touched on the UFL talent they brought in. We talked about Cam Eccles Looper. You've got BJ Emmons there. You've
hmm
got a couple other guys. Demario Houston, I believe, was from the UFL as well. It's just interesting to see how these guys have kind of filtered into the CFL and started to make an immediate impact. I mean, Eccles Looper, like I said, three receptions on 4 targets, 40 yards and a touchdown. Not a bad day for a guy who was not in the league last season. So interesting to see how they've kind of filled that role. Shout out to Rene Paredes, who 6 for 6 on field goals. I mean, can't be mad at him after that performance. It's as good as it gets. Like you said, kind of also spoiled the return for Bo Levi Mitchell. Did not look good at all. 27 of 38. A couple carries there. James Butler did what James Butler does. Wanted to shout out another former guest of the show, Shamar Bridges. We call him Showtime. 11 targets, 7 receptions, 85 yards. When I saw he signed with Hamilton, I had hopes that he would be able to make the roster. I never in a million years thought he would see a team leading 11 targets in week one. So, I mean, it looks like he's going to be a big part of Hamilton's offense going forward. And that offense just got a lot more interesting. And you can definitely scold me if I mispronounce this name, because I'm probably going to. But Talia? Talia? Tagovailoa?
Talia Tungaviola.
There we
Uh,
go. That's what
he
it.
he signed this week. I was actually in touch base. He had a cup of coffee with the Arizona Cardinals. He got an invite into camp and was with the Cardinals. They moved on from him. I think that the trade for Desmond Ritter and then Clayton Tune still being there, it was going to be he was going to be nothing more than a camp arm anyway. So good for him, landing on his feet in the CFL. He's the Big Ten all-time leading passer. At Maryland, in case anybody didn't know. He actually entered the transfer portal and was trying to get a waiver to be able to stay in college for another year. The NCAA denied him that, so he had to make an alternative plan, enter the NFL draft, and it didn't go quite as expected. I do want to touch real quick, Sam, before we move on to something else. Calgary's defense is going to need to shore itself up a little bit. It seems like it's the common theme amongst my teams this year is the defense just kind of not really being there. Hamilton had 459 total yards in this game. Calgary came up big when it mattered the most to stop a lot of those plays, but when you give up that amount of yardage, regardless of it how it looked overall, it becomes a problem, and that's one of the things that Calgary is going to need to shore up in order to, um, you know, be a contender or at least a playoff team. However they want to, wherever they want to be this year, they're going to have to kind of tighten that up a little bit. So, like I said, it's a common theme amongst my teams this this year. You know, the Gallos Negros and the Panthers over in ELF are both need to have their defense tightened up a little bit. So we'll see what happens with Calgary in that sense. But big win week one. Hamilton has a lot to look forward to. I still don't know about the roster as a whole. It still is kind of a little bit of a question mark for me. They got some talent though, for sure, and the week one proved that they have some talent. So we'll see how much it meshes as the year goes on.
Absolutely. Big factor right there that you want to look at is that 10 for 19 on second down, and then also 8.1 yards per play on 57 offensive plays. That is not a small feat to be had against any defense. We are going to take a short commercial break because I need to grab something to drink, and then we will be right back.
This is Current. It's the card my parents used to pay me for mowing the lawn, running errands, and doing well in school. This is the card I used when we got the idea to make our own clothes. And we spread the word, drove downtown, and sold everything we made. This is the card I used to do the things that really matter. This is Current. Visit current.com and download the app for free today.
All right, sorry about that. Needed to step away for a moment, like I said.
Shout out to Current. Thank you for the sponsor, my man, my guys, and we appreciate everything that you do for us. So.
Absolutely. Great banking app. I would highly recommend it to anybody. And not just because they pay us to sponsor them. So, which we actually have never had anybody sign up. Just really would recommend signing up because it's a great banking app, super convenient, all online. So everything's at the touch of a button, which I happen to love. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the Saskatchewan and Edmonton game, which actually ended up way closer than I expected. Another 8-point deficit, which really odd to see all three other games other than that Winnipeg-Montreal game in an 8-point deficit. I don't think if that's ever, in my knowledge, happened before. So kind of interesting to see that see that this week.
I mean, this game was 29-21, but this game was realistically 22-21. It was a late turnover that ended up resulting in a touchdown for Saskatchewan late that put them up. I mean, but the game was pretty much over when it was 22-21. There was a little time left. It just wasn't going to be enough for Edmonton to make a difference.
That's fair. Man, it's kind of interesting to see how Edmonton's offseason has gone. We've made jokes all year long about their quarterback situation. And ultimately, come week one, it's exactly who we all expected to be starting, McLeod Bethel Thompson, with Dakota Prukop, who I don't think anybody expected to be there, as their third down option. Kind of surprising that we only saw Dakota get one carry for 6 yards in this game. I expected him to get more of a role. I'm sure we'll see that kind of develop as we go forward. Ultimately, it was pretty encouraged by what McLeod Bethel Thompson was able to do. Not surprised by it, but Edmonton isn't nearly as talented a team as Toronto is, where he used to play. So it was kind of up in the air how he was going to go. Are you surprised to see how well he performed with Edmonton?
Honestly, this game is very interesting. I'm not surprised to see him perform as well as he did. First and foremost, we're talking, an older quarterback. He's what, 38, or 37, 38. He's somewhere in that range. He's been around for a while. He's had extensive, experience with the CFL. So the game isn't going to be something that's going to suddenly slow him down because he was in the USFL last year. I think it was important for him to kind of venture down here, see what it was like. And I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be the end. I think he wants to end his career in the CFL because that's kind of where he made a name for himself. The 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 thing that struck me the most in this game was how one-dimensional both teams were. Neither team was really capable of able to get the run game going. Edmonton's run defense looked really, really good against Saskatchewan, and I think that solid defense kind of helped MBT out. But let's talk about the real failure in this game, and it's the coaching again. I hate harping on it because it's not something that I like to do. Even though I'm not a fan of Chris Jones, um, he once again has found a way to lose a game that they were in control of. And it's because of his play calling. I don't know if anybody really realized it or followed this closely, but this game was 18-8 going into the fourth quarter. They gave up 21 points in the fourth because the play calling became so one-dimensional that they were in second and long the entire fourth quarter. So I don't know what it is with him. I don't know if it's the opposite or if he's trying to be too much like Marty Schottenheimer was in the NFL forever. Um, but they have to get more creative. MBT, they have to allow him to get more creative. They have to find a way to get the ball out of his hands and utilize a lot of the short yardage stuff and try to get the balls into the ball into the playmakers' hands so they can make moves after the catch. Because right now, if this is how this is going to be, they're going to be in the lead for a lot of games and they're going to blow it late in a lot of games.
Real quick, I wanted to touch on something that I found quite interesting. Robert Nkemdiche, a former first-round pick in the NFL, got his first sack since 2018 in this game. First ever CFL start and gets a sack. Kind of interesting because he did a whole lot of nothing last season in the IFL. And I think he had a brief stay with an NAL team too. I can't find any statistics anywhere on that, but did not have a sack with the Vegas Nighthawks last season. So kind of crazy to see that he got a sack so far with Edmonton. And I do want to throw out there that I have to give Edmonton some credit in how they build their roster, not their quarterback position, because they are incredibly when it comes to that. But when you overall look at their roster, it seems like they're more open to overturning every stone to find players. I mean, a perfect example is Robert Nkemdiche. That guy was basically off the map for professional leagues outside of indoor football last season. All of a sudden, he's back in the CFL this year. Leon O'Neal Jr., Chris's guy, was suspended from the IFL last season due to a situation in Arizona. Could have easily faded away into the sunset and never played football again. Instead, he now became a starter up for Edmonton, had 3 tackles for a loss and 6 tackles overall, as well as a special teams tackle. Cordell Jackson, a former indoor football guy as well. So just kind of interesting how they've built this roster. It seems like like I said, they're very open to anywhere and everywhere they can find talent. Now, has it panned out into wins so far? No. So are they doing these guys any favors in terms of trying to get more players up there currently? Probably not. But I think overall, the fact that they're willing to sign the players is awesome to see for a large indoor football fan like myself.
Well, I think that when you take a look at Edmonton and you take a look at the roster breakdown, like, you know, Nkemdiche, his sack came at the perfect time. It was, it was a drive that could have easily shifted the entire game and went in Edmonton's way. And I don't think it's the players. I saw Nkemdiche play last year live, and I got to tell you, I don't know if the reason why he didn't have a sack was because of it was too much for him. I just think that he just wasn't really trying, to be honest with you. I hate to say it, but it didn't feel like it was as intense. It got intense late in the game against Massachusetts, and he kind of showed up a little bit more, but that was more frustration at that point than it was anything else. So kudos to him for getting the sack. Maybe we'll light a fire under his rear end again. To hopefully maybe get back to that point of showcasing why he was a first round talent. It's just, for me, it's always been Edmonton's been in these games for the most part. It's not like they've been blown out. They've had a few blowouts last year, but they're always in these games, and it feels like there's just down the stretch, it's questionable coaching decision, it's questionable play calling, and then it's just poor execution. So we'll see what happens moving forward with them. Now, Saskatchewan, on the other hand, I have got to give all the credit in the world to Corey Mace. His first, I think it's his first head coaching job, and first game, and they were down. I mean, they looked like that they were going to be down and out, and he told Trevor Harris basically, go do your thing. Like, we have to be one dimensional because the run game wasn't effective. I mean, AJ Willett was like, what, 18 for 32, so he was not even really on. Like, he was talking about being on a different planet. I think AJ Willett was playing a different game somewhere else. But Sean Bain Jr., he's one of my favorite players to watch in the CFL. He had a sensational game. Him and Trevor Harris hooked up for 3 touchdowns. He went over for 100 yards. So, Saskatchewan's got a lot of pieces and a lot of players that are really, really talented. And I have to give kudos to Corey Mace for just trusting his guys to go out and do their thing. And this was a comeback victory as a whole for a team because the head coach had his trust in his players.
That's a great point. I mean, a lot of times that's what it takes. I mean, sometimes that's the whole difference in a game, and it seems like this was definitely one of them. Interesting to see the connection built there with Sean Bain Jr. and Trevor Harris. Man, 3 touchdowns on 5 receptions for 125 yards. Unbelievable performance. I was very shocked to see AJ Ouellette have such issues against Edmonton. Kudos to their defensive line and ultimately their secondary. I mean, their second level of their defense was able to kind of hem him in pretty well on this game. Ultimately Trevor Harris still managed to throw a couple of interceptions. That seems to happen in every game.
Yeah.
I will say that at some point, as a head coach, I'm not saying with Saskatchewan, although that would be the trend, Corey Mace is going to win a Grey Cup. He's won one as a player, he's won one as a defensive line coach, and he's won one as a defensive coordinator. This is his first stint as a head coach, so I'm just saying it's bound to happen at some point. He's never played for or coached for a team without winning at least one Grey Cup. So just kind of an interesting stat for him. Obviously there's something there when it comes to his coaching ability. You're not accidentally ending up on all these winning teams throughout your career. So I expect success, probably not right away. I don't see Saskatchewan winning this year, but maybe next year they're in the conversation. Who knows?
Kudos to that defense too for shoring up down the stretch and shutting down Edmonton when it mattered the most. Again, that was one of those things where Coach Mace clearly trusted his guys and didn't adjust the play calling. So it was super important, I think, to have the coach to have the trust in the players in clutch situations.
Absolutely. Moving on to the final game of the weekend, which honestly was another surprise. BC versus Toronto. Obviously Toronto has been the center of a lot of storylines this offseason with the loss of, why am I blanking his name at the moment? Chad Kelly. They lost Chad Kelly to the legal situation that has unfolded there. He has since settled, so he's going to appeal the suspension. It has not happened yet, but Toronto inevitably walked into week 1 without Chad Kelly. They started their backup, Cameron Dukes, who played pretty damn well. Kudos to Toronto for finding and developing quarterback talent like nobody else in the league, it seems. But ultimately, this game was just a great game. It could have gone either way. BC Lions right now are like the Grey Cup favorites in the league, thanks in part to Vernon Adams and William Stanback. Both of them were played pretty well in this game for the most part. But ultimately, I was impressed by Toronto. I mean, there was multiple different ways this could have gone in this game. You could have easily folded and just laid down and died against BC. BC is one of the best teams in the league right now. You're missing your starting quarterback. It was very late in the process when you lost that starting quarterback. Yet here comes Cameron Dukes having possibly the second best day out of any quarterback this weekend. And ultimately, he didn't have a blemish on his record. He didn't throw an interception. He didn't make a whole lot of poor decisions. He ran when he needed to. Kadeem Carey did his part. Ultimately, I think Toronto fans should be incredibly encouraged by this game, even though they ended up not winning. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, this game could have gotten ugly fast. I mean, it was 20-6 at one point in time. Toronto, at the end of the first half, closed out, scored 10 unanswered heading into halftime, giving them, a 20-16 lead for BC. The big thing here that is the takeaway is this is the one time where numbers lie, statistics lie. BC outproduced on yardage Toronto, but the entire second half was all about Toronto's defense. It was pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure. I think I was the only one that predicted Toronto to win on the panel last week. And I believe our guest, had BC blowing out Toronto. This defense was getting pressure on Vernon Adams when it mattered the most, and they were beating him up bad in the third and fourth quarter. And this win, to me, even though it was an 8-point win, it was 35-27. This win goes to Toronto's defense just as much as it does Cameron Dukes in the offense, because it was very much a defensive effort down the stretch that kept BC in check and allowed Toronto to win this game.
Well, let's be honest. That's a big reason why Toronto's been able to be so successful over the past couple of years. They know how to run the ball and they know how to play defense. They've never really needed a quarterback to step up and be that big time performer, but they've had some big time performances by their quarterbacks nonetheless. I think in this game, Cameron Dukes did what he needed to do. I don't think he necessarily lit the world on fire per se, but I think that's an incredibly inspiring performance by a first-time quarterback or a first-time week one starter in the CFL. I mean, I know he started a game last season. It was under interesting circumstances where I think Toronto was more or less giving Kelly a rest game, and they gave Dukes a start. He showed up well, but this was a little bit different situation. It was a game that mattered very well for mattered a lot for Toronto. Again, it could have been a situation where Toronto just laid down and died, and they didn't. And I misspoke a moment ago and said they lost this game. They did not lose this game. They won this game. I meant to say BC lost. I apologize for anybody watching. Probably pretty confusing when I showed the score and Toronto won. But definitely encouraging by Toronto, and I think that just speaks volumes on how good of a team, how well coached they are. Because if you want to talk about attrition on their roster, Toronto was one of the most torn apart teams this offseason. They lost all kinds of talent. They lost, first of all, their defensive coordinator, Corey Mace, to Saskatchewan. That's no small loss. He brought some players with him, and, AJ Ouellette went with him. They lost, I'm blanking his name, Darius Pickett to Ottawa. They lost Darius Bledek to Ottawa. There's multiple different players. I could go on and on about all the different players that they lost. Specifically in the running game, I wasn't sure what to think, but Kadeem Carey came in. He did his part. Daniel Adebaboye, he played okay. I was expecting him to take hold of the backfield a little bit more. Maybe it'll come in future weeks. Passing game looked on point, spreading the ball around quite a bit, despite the lack of talent they've had there and lost certain players. ultimately, just like I said, an incredibly inspiring performance. I mean, if you're a Toronto fan, you have to be happy about the future, knowing that this could have been, worst case scenario. If you were going to lose a game, it could have been this game very easily.
Uh,
Like we said, BC's the quote unquote Grey Cup favorites for the season.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest things that it boils down to is, you did this and won this game against the Grey Cup favorites, right? You won against the favorites to win it. It was week one where everybody was expecting you because you were pretty much decimated in the offseason to just come out and be flat. You had a backup quarterback. I will say that Cameron Dukes actually led all quarterbacks in fantasy points. So if you play CFL fantasy, Cameron Dukes actually was the highest scoring quarterback this week, and I had him in my lineup, so that was cool. I had him and Sean Bain, and I had Sean Bain as my captain, so he scored me like 75 points. So kudos to me. A little selfless plug there for CFL fantasy purposes. But no, it's a great performance for Toronto, and I think that Toronto should be happy with where they're going. Now, they have a 9-game suspension for Chad Kelly, assuming that it doesn't get reduced. If it gets reduced, you're probably looking at 7 games maybe. So if they can walk out of here with even like a 1 game over 500 or at a 500 mark or something along those lines, I would say that I think Toronto should be very ecstatic with Cameron Duke's performance in that case. If they could walk out of there with that kind of record with getting Chad Kelly back.
I would agree. And I think the parity in this season is going to do them some favors, because I think some of these teams are going to cannibalize each other during that stretch when Chad Kelly's out. So even if Dukes, doesn't perform up to the task in a couple games this season, they can afford to drop a few games early, especially if Chad Kelly comes back and looks like Chad Kelly did last season. If they could immediately hit the ground running with him again, they could finish up strong and still be in the thick of the playoff race for the 1 or 2 seed, and it would be like he was never gone. So, honestly, I think we all want to sit here and say Toronto is in a bad situation, but they might actually be at an advantage long term, assuming Kelly comes back and looks okay, because then all of a sudden you go from being a team with one of the least experienced backup quarterback rooms to a team that now has a guy with a lot of starts under his belt in your offense. So I think that's something to be said about that in particular. So, I think that's definitely got some value, especially down the stretch if Chad Kelly comes back and, tries to jump into the thick of things and immediately gets hurt, which we have seen in the past with some players that have, gotten hurt or got injured or suspended early on in the season.
I will say that this victory for Toronto, I think, is going to be much bigger than anybody really anticipated, including Toronto. When they look back at where they are when Chad Kelly does come back, this is going to be one of the ones that they point to and say that was a tone setter for us to get to where we needed to be for when Chad returned. So,
no, I completely agree. And I honestly think that this is just foreshadowing what's to come, because if you didn't lose this game, there might be some games where you slip and fall, but it looks like the team overall has the talent to overcome and the coaching staff to overcome, when they do face adversity. And, this was going to be one of the games that was going to give them the biggest test, and they came out on top. And like I said, I think that's a huge step in the right direction for a young quarterback and a coaching staff that saw some turnover. It shows that, the Toronto's defense is still going to play well, despite the fact that they lost Corey Mace and a lot of these primetime performers like Quantez Stiggers that went to the NFL, Jamal Perry. I always mix up his last name. I think it's Peters that jumped over to Hamilton, I believe it was. So it's just crazy to see Toronto still managing to find a way to be successful no matter what happens to them. It just seems like they're for to steal a really cringy term that I hate, they're built different than other teams right now.
They are.
Looking forward to next week's action, which starts tomorrow. Shout out to CFLNewsHub.com. I will be producing my preview early in the morning, so make sure to check that out. Starting tomorrow, we have another 4-day stretch of games. So I don't know if the CFL plans to continue doing this for most of the season. I love it. Go ahead.
Not to cut you off, Sam. I think that they do this the first 3 weeks out of the year.
I was not aware of that.
I think it's the first
I didn't know
3.
it was a trend.
Yep.
Hopefully they keep it going longer than that, because man, it makes it so much nicer to try and watch these games, the IFL and everything else going on right now. So I hope it keeps up, whatever the reason. I love it. CFL, if you're listening, keep it up. But looking at Winnipeg versus Ottawa, as you can see on the screen, Winnipeg is a 6.5-point favorite, despite the fact that they are playing this game in Ottawa. The over-under is 46. I believe that's what that says.
Yeah, it's 46.5.
46.5. I apologize. And then negative 290 is the money line for Winnipeg Blue Bombers, plus 235 for Ottawa. I'm just going to say I take Ottawa in the points in this game. What do you think?
I'm taking Ottawa with the spread and under.
I can see that.
Ottawa's a tricky team this year. We've been, they Drew Brown's in a situation where it's basically knowing that he was basically going to be the backup, except for a few spot starts. Right. This year he's going in as the full-fledged starter. So it's a little bit of a different approach for him, a little bit different of preparation. I don't really know what to expect. They did do a great job in the offseason bringing in a lot of talent. I just don't see Winnipeg covering the 6.5, even if Ottawa loses this game. And I just don't know if they reach that 46.5 with the slow start that Winnipeg had last week. They only scored 12 points. So Ottawa's defense is much improved. It could be another low-scoring situation for Winnipeg. So I would take Ottawa with the spread, and I would say under in this situation. I don't know if I take the money line in this one. Probably ignore the money line.
Okay, so both of us say take Ottawa in the points, and Michael says take the under. That's tough. I think I'm going to say the under as well. After that performance by Winnipeg, it's hard to say that they're going to come out and score much over 20 points. And Ottawa, I don't have any faith in our offense yet until they show me. The defense I'm very encouraged by, but man, they struggle to move the ball with all the starters way too much in week 2 in the preseason for me to be too confident. So definitely going to take Ottawa in the under there. Now, as far as your overall prediction for this game, do you think Ottawa wins it?
No, I think Winnipeg's going to win this one. I think I'm not confident in it, but I think Winnipeg's going to get it. This could be very well a race to 17, as odd as that sounds. I'm going to have Winnipeg winning this game 18-14. I just don't know where to put Ottawa yet. On paper, it looks good, but we don't play football on paper. So until they prove it otherwise, 18-14. It's a score that sticks out to me for some reason. I do want to say that normally I don't take the under on the lowest point total of the weekend because normally they surpass it. This is the lowest point total on the weekend for the betting line. So if you're like me and normally say over, I would not tell you otherwise. Don't do it. I'm not sold on the under aspect of it. It's just a feeling I have more than anything. So
it's good to know. I'm personally taking Ottawa. I'm going to pick Ottawa 21-15. I say that, and I'm literally like not even sold on it as I say it. So I'm hoping Ottawa comes out, scores 3 touchdowns, and manages to keep Winnipeg right around what they did last week, 12 to 15 points. I think the defense is good enough to make it happen. I'm just not sure about that offense. So if you're a bettor, and you're trying to make some money this week, just a reminder, both take Ottawa and the points as well as the under. Michael picked Winnipeg 18 to 14. I'm saying Ottawa 21 to 15. So moving on to the next game, we've got Montreal and Edmonton. Montreal is a 5-point favorite in this game, despite being the away team. 47.5-point over under, and then 230 money line for Montreal, or negative 230, and a plus 190 for Edmonton. If you were betting, which team are you betting on here?
I'm taking Montreal. I think they cover. So I'm taking Montreal on the spread. And if you're an over-under bettor, I'm probably going over on this one.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to say Montreal covers as well, but I'm going to go under. I just don't, 47.5 points is a lot. But
It is a lot. It really comes down to Edmonton carrying their portion of that total, which I think they do, barely.
Okay. Spread. Over. All right. I'm going to put all this stuff in the comments. Then we have it. Hey.
Hey, both take my, there you go.
Eventually I'll come up with a good way to have all this stuff arranged, and I won't have to chase it all down.
You probably should have done it with the with the points that we were going to predict too. So that way you didn't have a separate comment. I haven't done the Montreal points yet, though.
I know.
That's
what we're gonna have multiple comments for everything.
Multiple comments. Okay, hey, that will drive the algorithm too to spread out a little bit further.
Yes. So. See,
yeah,
we're learning. We're getting there. No, just kidding. No. Anyway, so what's your prediction overall for this game?
31 to 20, Montreal. I think it's gonna be a 51. Montreal just looks so good. Cody Fajardo is just he's never really spoken about, but he's always been an upper quarterback in this league, and this defense is just it swarms. I just expect MBT to continue to get comfortable with this team and his receiving core, and I think that we'll see hopefully a little more creativity.
Okay. I've got Montreal 27-17. Basically similar score, similar deficit there. I don't see Edmonton keeping this game too much closer than, a 2-score deficit. They're just, they're a decent team. I think they're improved, but I'm not prepared to put them in the same category as Montreal yet. Montreal is looking like the class of the league currently, along with BC and Winnipeg, Toronto. So definitely will be interesting to see how this season goes along, but just not quite there yet with Edmonton. But this game is very interesting to me, this next game, and I'm sure I have an idea what you're going to say, but I personally think this spread is a little insane. Giving 8 points to the Lions, saying they're 8-point favorites, even though they're at home, that seems a bit much, especially considering what Calgary just did and what Jake Maier was able to do last week. But what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's pretty high. If I was betting on this, I'd probably take Calgary with the points. And honestly, I'd probably take the over on this one at 50 and a half. I kind of expect a little bit of some fireworks in this case. I mean, BC just gave up, 30 to Toronto. Calgary scored 30, plus in week one. So it just really is going to come down to Jake Maier. Which Maier are we going to get? And that's going to be the key opponent here. For me, I think BC wins this game. It's just going to be probably like 33 to 31 type of game. I want to say. I mean, it's going to be closer than I think that anybody's really predicts.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I expect fireworks. Basically, this is the game that I expect some fireworks to happen.
Okay, I could definitely see it. I mean, two high-powered offenses. If Jake Mayer's on, like we talked about before, he's really on. So this could be one of those games where he comes to play. I'm definitely going to agree with you. Take Calgary in the points. I don't think BC is going to win by 8 points. I do think they're going to win. I don't know about 8 points. I would also say take the over. I expect a lot of points scored in this game, even if it's by Jake Mayer throwing 6 picks. Something's going to happen. This game's going to be high scoring. I don't think Mayer's going to fall flat on his face quite that bad, but I'm going to say, man, I don't think either team gets to 40, but it might be one of those games.
It's possible. It is very possible that one of these teams hits the 40. This game feels like opposite of what the Ottawa game is. This feels like a race to 30. That's what this one feels like.
I could see that for sure. I could definitely see that. So we're gonna say 36-30, BC, and even that's kind of pushing it on that deficit. I really don't think it's going to be a 6-point game. Maybe it's a last-second field goal or it's something. I just even then, I'm not super confident on that score prediction, but I just think BC is going to win. It's just going to be fairly close. And then the closest point spread of the week, which is probably the most accurate if I'm looking at all of these, is Saskatchewan versus Hamilton in Hamilton. Saskatchewan Hamilton's a 1-point favorite at home. I think typically the norm is a 3-point favorite when you're the home team if it's a completely even matchup. And in this case, it looks like they're giving a little bit of an edge to Saskatchewan. Over under 48 points, money line -105 for Saskatchewan, -115 for Hamilton. So I mean, if it's you, what are you betting on here?
Hamilton moved the ball pretty well last week against Calgary. We talked about the defense a little bit, needing to shore up with Calgary. So this is a complete opposite with Saskatchewan. They had a rough start, but they made the adjustments that needed to be made against Edmonton. I'd like the Saskatchewan team. I really do. I don't think that they're going to be like a contender, like a Grey Cup contender, but I think that this team could actually sneak into the playoffs, and I think it's going to start early for them. And I'm going to have them beating Hamilton here. So I take the points in this case, but I think it's going to be under if you're an over-under better in this situation. So I take Saskatchewan. I take the under. 24 to 17. Probably like 18 because there's the Rouge. So 24 to 18. There'll be a Rouge in there. There'll be a Rouge.
Saskatchewan, the under 24 to 18. All one comment. Look at that.
All in one comment and all in one spiel of me talking.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. It's okay, guys. We will get better with the betting segment as we go. We don't normally talk betting odds, just so everybody's clear. This is special for you guys.
This is not expert advice at all. Do not take this as gospel.
Yeah. Do you even bet on games? I don't.
Me? No, I do occasionally, but it's more of the daily stuff. This still hasn't been approved in the state of Maine yet. It will be hopefully here in the near future, but once it does, I'll probably place a few bets here and there.
We love you, Daniel.
Sounds expertish to me. Thank you, Daniel. We do we love you for that, but you don't have to blow smoke up our ass.
So yeah, speaking of completely unexpert analysis, I'm taking Hamilton. Primarily because they're the home team, and both of these teams, like I said, I think they're really even. I think this is a really, really good game. I think it's gonna be a fun game to watch. I don't think it's gonna be a very high scoring game, so I think I'd probably take the under as well here. But I just think this is a very evenly matched game. So if you like games that are, it's not a blowout either way. I think this is going to be one of those games for you. A little bit of a defensive matchup in this one for sure. You said 24-18. I mean, honestly, you're probably pretty spot on with that score. I'm going to go a little bit less points wise. I'm going to say, man, let's just go 2017. And even that's probably closer than I'm expecting. Well, not closer than I'm expecting, but closer to 48 than I'm expecting.
Gonna regret sleeping on Saskatchewan, I'm telling you.
Maybe in this one game.
You should write it in the comments. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we'll pretend like that was never said. Definitely. So I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is gonna be an interesting week of games. Like I said, I think some of these spreads are a little bit high, in my personal opinion. This is very early in the season, so I think a lot of this stuff is based off of last season's power rankings and all that, and how they get figured out. But we'll see how things go this weekend, and maybe it kind of reaffirms some of this. Maybe it shakes up the power rankings even more than it has over the first week. I think there's definitely going to be some definite upsets going forward. I think it's going to be a great season overall for the CFL. Like I said, the parity seems to be a lot closer this season, personally.
The thing about the CFL is it's so many games and so much can happen. For a 9-team league, and it's great football. It really is. It's a different game than what you're used to down here in America, but at the same time, a lot of the same elements still apply and still stand. It's just a little bit of a different game. If you can learn, the little nuances and the changes and the rules, it's a game that you can absolutely enjoy and love to watch. And yeah, I fell in love with it years ago, and still here I am being a fan. So now getting my own now doing my own CFL show. So it's awesome. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a very entertaining league. I mean, if you're an American watching who has not had a chance to catch a game, I believe all of the games are available CBS Sports now this season, if I'm not mistaken.
not all of them. You will still have to sign up for CFL Plus. It is free. It's just an email. That's it. It's through the website. If you have a phone that streams to your TV, you can just stream it to your TV and watch it that way. Last week, 3 out of the 4 games were on CBS.
Sorry, so they have a game every week. Is that what it is?
I don't know the total amount of games that are being aired for CBS Sports, but I want to say 38 of them total, maybe. I want to say something like that. I remember 38 or 48, something in that range, is being aired on CBS, and then the rest of it will be through, the CFL Plus, so which is free also. So
38 opportunities for casual fans to tune in, hopefully. So
it's tough with CBS Sports Network though, because it's not really followed across. But if you have YouTube TV, Fubo, really any of the streaming services, CBS Sports Network is carried with it. It's part of the pack. It's part of the sports package. So if you have that, then you should be able to find it no problem. If you're Direct TV, I don't really know anything about that, so I don't know what that falls into.
So good luck if you have Direct TV, because I have no idea either. I use streaming services. I watch YouTube TV. So, between CFL Plus and YouTube TV, we had access to all the games. Highly recommend YouTube TV. If you do sign up, definitely hit me up. Use our code. Help us get a free month of YouTube TV, because it's awesome. But on that note, I'm pretty much out of stuff to talk about. I think we covered most of the main subjects from this week's action. The injuries and stuff that have popped up, the recent player signings. One thing we haven't touched on, and I think we should probably get into that a little bit more next episode, is the Sean Lemon situation. with his appeal. I think that, that's obviously a very popular topic right now, so we could definitely get into that and talk about that a little bit more. But it is already midnight Eastern time, and I know you live on the East Coast, so I'm sure you're wanting to wrap this up.
Well, before we do, I do want to give a quick shout out to the CFL for basically being able to grow. 22% increase in viewership, whether it's through the CFL Plus or CBS Sports Network. A 22% increase from week one. That's a huge jump, and it's something that league needs. So keep supporting it, and I promise you that if you're just a casual that doesn't know much about it, check it out. You will fall in love with this game over time. You got to give it maybe a game or two, but give it a legitimate shot, and you'll end up loving it. I promise.
I would agree. I was skeptical at first, to be completely honest. But jumping into it, I think it's a fast-paced brand of football that you don't really get anywhere else. I mean, I don't know of any other 3-down football leagues outside of the Canadian realm. So, it's definitely a different. It's punting on 3rd down is a whole new game, knowing that there is no 4th down to live with. So, it's definitely an interesting game. They approach it differently. There's different rules. There's a little bit of adaptation for somebody who's used to the NFL rule set, but it makes it more interesting, in my opinion. One of the big things that we've talked about a lot is this quarterback specialist, the short yardage quarterback that they bring in on all these teams, and it's it's fun to watch. Kind of almost their own version of the tush push, but there's a little bit more of a wrinkle there because the defensive line's a yard off the ball. So, it makes it a little bit more effective, a little bit more widely used, and a little bit more interesting, in my personal opinion. But definitely tune in. Hit up CFL Plus, like Michael said, completely free to sign up. Go check out any game. Any game involving Montreal, Toronto, BC, Winnipeg. Guaranteed you're going to be watching some good football, and you won't be disappointed. On that note, tune in here next week, Wednesday, 10:30 p.m. once again. I think we'll be shifting to Tuesdays going forward. We'll discuss that and get back with you guys in the next episode. But thank you for tuning in. We appreciate everybody who watched. If you have been watching, hit that like button, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're a huge CFL fan, tell all your friends about this. We would really appreciate it. And we will catch you guys in the next episode.